Hey, what's going on? Jeff Ratcliffe here. It's fantasy football draft season, and we want to dominate our fantasy drafts. There's no doubt about it. The easiest way to get a good start to your season is dominating that draft. So I'm going to give you 5 things that you can do to dominate your fantasy drafts here in 2018. And the first one is practice. Not a game. Practice. You gotta practice. Practice makes perfect. So how do you practice for fantasy drafts? Well, of course you can do mock drafts, but you know what? Sometimes mock drafts don't work out that well. You get into a mock draft with other people, they draft the first couple rounds, and then they leave, right? And then the computer picks their picks. I've been there. We've all been there. So another approach to practicing draft strategy is best ball drafts. If you're new to best ball, it's pretty simple. What you do is you draft a team, and then that's it. The computer picks your best lineups every single week, and your best lineup scores, and you can play for some money too. So it's a great thing. Everybody has something on the line, so all of those drafts, you're not going to have people bailing on you. You'll be able to practice. And the beauty to best ball is they start as far back as March. They're starting basically almost right after the Super Bowl, and they go right up to the beginning of the NFL season. So you can do a bunch of them over several months. You can do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You could do 30. You could legitimately do that in that span of time from March to September. Now think about this. Say you did 30 best ball drafts. That's 30 drafts to practice. Well, if you're in 3 home leagues, how long does it take you to draft 30 times? Quick math, right? 30 times, that's 10 years. You can get 10 years worth of practice in the span of 6 months. The experience there is invaluable. Now, the strategy is a little bit different in best ball than it is in regular, but don't worry about that. You're not worried about this strategy per se. You're worried about adjusting to draft conditions and practicing. So practice as much as possible. Best balls are the best way to do so. Number 2, do your research. Research is important, and it's not just about knowing who the new players are or who the free agent signings were. I mean, you want to know a lot more than that. You want to know the coaching situations. So what does Matt Nagy coming into Chicago mean for that Bears offense? What do we expect to see, for somebody like Mitchell Trubisky, for example? That's the research I'm talking about. Beyond that, statistical research, we know fantasy is a game of stats. So are there players out there who maybe overperformed, who maybe underperformed last year? Do all of that research. But you know what? You don't have to run around and try and find this all on your own. The good news, we have all the research for you at ProFootballFocus.com. Endless amounts of research to help you out in your draft prep. So do your research. Number 3, well, use your research to build a draft board. What is a draft board? For me, a draft board is essentially, I borrowed this from the NFL. I just stole the idea. But you're putting together where you're picking players by round with everything on one screen or everything on one sheet of paper if you bring pieces of paper to your draft. So quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, all there by round, tiered, and then you know the values of each player compared to each other. On one sheet of paper, one draft board. That's it. So instead of coming with a magazine and printouts and all sorts of sheets of paper, or coming with your laptop and having 50 tabs open on your web browser, you have one sheet of paper. Simple, elegant, easy, and you won't make mistakes with a draft board. And if you want my draft board, my personal draft board, unless you're in one of my fantasy leagues, go to Pro Football Focus. You can get it right there. And then you'll see even how I lay it out. You can use the format to make your own draft board as well. Number 4, be flexible. Flexibility is key in fantasy drafts. And what does that mean? Well, you have to have different strategies at your disposal. When you step into a fantasy draft, now, granted, most drafts are pretty similar in the early rounds, but you can never predict exactly how they're going to play out. How many times have you sat down, tried to mock out your draft exactly how it's going to play out in the first couple rounds? Have you ever been right? Because I've never been right. It just doesn't happen, right? So there's always going to be wild cards. There's always going to be picks that you don't expect, things that play out, and you have to be able to be flexible and adjust to that. Don't go in with a rigid strategy saying, I'm drafting a running back in the first round no matter what. I'm drafting a wide receiver no matter what in the second round. Because what if the value says you should do the opposite, right? Being flexible will allow you to do so. And here's the best part. That means that your opponents made mistakes. And when our opponents make mistakes, it doesn't matter what the game is. We have to capitalize on that. We have to make them pay for those mistakes. And that's ultimately how we're going to dominate. So be flexible. Come in with different strategies. Check out our draft strategies videos for that at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. That'll help you out there. And then finally, number 5, you heard me use the word a couple times, draft for value. It's all about value in fantasy football. You want to get value at every single one of your picks. There's no player out there who you have to own this year for fantasy. You have to get every single one of your players at value. Because what happens is, I have to have this guy on my team. I have to draft this guy. Well, you probably will overvalue him at that point if you have to have a player. And when you overvalue a player, you do exactly what I just said your opponents are going to do for you. You're going to draft a player too early, which means players who should have been drafted slide down the board to your opponents at value, and you give them the advantage. That doesn't work. We're not going to do that. We're going to always draft for value. We follow our draft board to draft for value. So practice makes perfect. Do your research. Build a draft board. Be flexible and draft for value. What are some of your draft strategies? Give us a comment below. Of course, subscribe to the channel for more fantasy videos coming up soon. And for all of your fantasy football needs, go check us out at ProFootballFocus.com.